we talked about the scenario when somebody walks in through your door and you get them to sign an agency agreement before you talk any further with them. You just brought up a scenario where, let me ask you this. I'm driving down the road in Chatham County. I see a house that has a for sale sign on it. You're saying that I actually have the option of just reaching out to that seller's buyer, not involve a buyer agent, and not incur any cost from your side because I don't have a buyer's agent, but I'm dealing with the seller's agent.
It depends on the arrangement that that listing broker has with the seller, but that's conceivably possible. And I'm sure we're going to see in the future, we're going to see sellers that are willing to pay a listing broker that are going to put the big goose egg, they're going to have a zero on the buyer's broker. And if that's the case, yeah, you could, but you're responsible for everything at that point.
Now you also just threw out a scenario where if I'm a seller, I have the option of putting out that zero goose egg on the buyer side, but and again, it goes into effect tomorrow, so things will shake out. Do you see a future where, for most sellers, they determine that, hey, it doesn't make sense for me to necessarily put a zero on the other side, but work something out?
I mean, I think there's a whole gambit of different situations. Whatever I can see, like, you know, if it's a very, very desirable piece of land that is ripe for development, they might have the zero, and they've had the zeros in the past and everything. And truthfully, when you have like a big company like Toll Brothers or DR Horton or whatever, they don't want a buyer side commission. They're waiving it anyway. So that's all part of the negotiation. They have full-time land acquisition people that are representing.
They have the
expertise.
expertise.
They have the expertise, so they're not worried about it or whatever. But yeah, I mean, might we see that in the residential as well? It's definitely conceivable. I hope not. I hope that the more experienced, savvy sellers agents are able to explain the benefits of having that buyer side commission. And at the end of the day, I do think the dollars all work themselves out or whatever, but the big change is that it's fully negotiable right now.
Yeah, it's an interesting term, fully negotiable.
But you see, it's and so that's what the lawsuit was all about. Is that it was unfair coercion by the masses in these MLS services. But you have to understand that the agent individually or the firm individually is allowed to decide what their minimal standards are.
Right.
So it's fully negotiable, but there's, you know, like I happen to know that the cost of my transaction is $1,500. I get paid more than $1,500 if your property sells. But like I have it down to the wire. Like I know how much my photos, my measuring, my brochures, my staff, all the different services I'm on. Like I know what my cost per.
Yeah, that's why you're in business as long as you have, because you know what your cost structure is.
Right.
Which I mean, most successful businesses have to know what your cost structure is, because if you don't, you're like you're lucky if you survive.
Right, exactly. So these things are all going to be negotiable, but I plan on having good conversations with my sellers, and we'll figure out a plan.
All right. What other questions have you gotten? What other questions have you gotten that kind of you've either piqued your interest or you're kind of like, huh?
Oh, that real estate agents are done. That, you know, we're going to go the way of like travel agents or whatever. I really believe, you know, when I first started doing this job, the offer to purchase was a couple pages. Now it's 14 or 15 pages, and the whole process has become a lot more complex. I mean, one of the fascinating things is we're constantly being told by NCAR and the North Carolina Real Estate Commission, you are not attorneys, and yet every single year it seems like they put more attorney stuff on us. We're not attorneys. We don't have, you know, the backgrounds that attorneys have by any means. It's not even close. But the amount of information and responsibilities that your agent has is mind-blowing. I mean, I'm proud of the fact that I have a lot of good Google reviews, and it's because at the end of the transaction, my people feel as though that they got what they paid for. When you're able to explain it, everything that you do for your client, it doesn't seem as though it's as bad as what the media puts out there.
All right, we're going to do a quick little sidetrack. It's not, you just mentioned the thing about the fact that you're now 12 to 14 pages versus a couple pages, and that you are not attorneys. Now, both times that I've purchased homes, I've used an attorney because my brother-in-law is a real estate attorney. He's like, you need to do that.
Absolutely.
What's your general advice on that?
Well, so you definitely have to have an attorney to close in North Carolina. I think that's great. You know, they do a title search for you. They provide title insurance for you. They make sure that all the documentation's right. It's recorded correctly. There's no way we could do this process without attorneys. There are some states that don't utilize attorneys for their closings, and North Carolina is much better off because we do utilize attorneys for our closings. Attorneys are pushing the paper and making sure that the closing gets done right and all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. They're not involved in the nuances of the market that we are. Like, you know, a couple years ago, you had to throw down $25,000-$50,000 due diligence money, and you had to come in over asking price just to get in front of someone. That's not the same market now. What is the market? It might be $2,500 to $3,500 due diligence, or maybe it's $5,000 due diligence, particular on the price.
When you say due diligence,
This
what
is
do you mean by due
this is a
diligence?
check that's written to the seller that's non-refundable for them to take the property off the market.
Okay.
So it's not like earnest money that goes into a trust account. This is a check that is written to the seller that says, "Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I love your property. I'm really passionate about buying it. I'm going to give you this amount of money to take the property off for a few weeks so I can investigate whether or not I'm going to go through with my transaction."
So you, as a seller, you're pulling your item off the market so that this person who's thinking about buying it, and
Right.
if that buyer decides,
Right.
you get to
So you
hold on
want
to
this-
due diligence.
It is a check that is written to you when you go under contract.
Right, because you're taking your product off the market,
Yeah.
so
It is credited toward the purchase price, but this is compensation to the seller for taking the property off the market. It's non-refundable, and so of course sellers want as much due diligence as possible, but the market is the market. And so I think that's one of the differences between, you know, a real estate agent and an attorney is we know what the market is today.
right.
You know.
Other questions you've gotten, because I know you've gotten some more questions that you want to let folks know. And like I said, we're probably going to end up doing this again in September, simply because I know once it goes into effect, you're going to see changes. What other questions, or is there anything? Let's go to that, and then I'll have another question.
I think there's a lot of hope that this is going to have a major impact on the prices of homes. I don't see that happening.
Why is there that hope?
Well, you know, if the buyer's agents commissions were eliminated everywhere, then you would potentially see a 2.5% to 3% shaving of all prices across the country. I just don't see that happening, but it might. We don't know. We'll see how it all shakes out.
Are we going to see horror stories where a seller's, like I said, someone's driving by and just interacts with the seller without having an agent on the buyer's side?
I think North Carolina has been very progressive as far as this is concerned, and I think that we've had established buyer's agency for a long time. Not every state has buyer's agency, and so I do think that overall North Carolina is going to deal with this matter a lot better than some other states. But I do think that we're going to have the horror stories of people that think they're a little bit smarter than they are, that waive representation and get into some really bad situations because they wanted to save some money. And I mean, one of the horrible analogies I make is cutting your own hair, and like, oh, I cut my own hair, it worked out great and everything, but when it goes bad, it goes really bad.
You don't cut your own hair.
I don't cut my own hair, no. But with these real estate transactions, I can see it getting pretty bad.
Is that especially important for somebody who's moving in from another state, because all states have different real estate rules, don't they?
Yeah, well, and you have to know what your covenants are. You have to know what you can or can't do with your property. You want to know whether or not the area is appreciating. You might want to know about the school district. You might want to know about the new rock quarry that's going in next door to you. I mean, there's so many things that, I can see this going really badly for some people, and they're just it's going to be a nightmare, because think of the amount of money that we were talking about, and people putting all that on the line, whether or not it's a mortgage, a debt, or they're paying cash or whatever. These are the biggest purchases we make in our life, right? And you want to make sure it's a good purchase.
Let's just take it back to where we're sitting here in Chatham County. You're a Chatham County agent. I also love when you get agents from outside the county. Oh yeah, I know the Chatham County market.
They know it.
This is my. They do know it.
No, they don't know. They don't know what a well is. They don't. I mean, I've been at closings where that other agent said, "Ugh, how can you drink well water?" And we're like, "Really?" I mean,
yeah, and this is a remark from me because I've seen a lot of those things, and I'm kind of like I've run into or heard some of the things stories that Eric had, and I just roll my eyes. Look, folks. Personal opinion, if you're going to buy land or property, residential property in Chatham County, deal with a Chatham County
you want
agent.
a local. I always say, and when it comes to selling real estate too, whenever I go on an interview and I find out that they're interviewing other people, I was like, it is in your best interest. You don't have to hire me, but make sure that you hire somebody local because we're able to talk that language to the Raleigh, Durham, Cary, Chapel Hill agent. They don't understand about permits in Chatham County. They don't understand about well and septic in Chatham County. They don't understand road maintenance agreements. I mean, there's a lot of different things, or private easements or public easements. It gets really, really complicated. So
yeah, there and if you're looking for something in Cary and Wake County, hey, reach out to a Cary Wake County agent. But if you're looking, again, it's you know the landscape. We mentioned at the I think beginning of it where relationships are important. Knowing your marketplace, knowing who the other agents in the county are, and just knowing your community. I mean, you're part of the Rotary Club. Also supports Northwood High School and all that kind of stuff. So he's in the community. He used to teach at Northwood High School
and coach.
And we got to include the and coach portion of it. So yeah, he's familiar with the area.
Well, and I like that I can go down to environmental health and I know those people on a first name basis.
Now they go, oh my gosh, here comes Eric.
Well, they've seen my name on a few applications before. We've done a few permits before, but yeah, it's just and just knowing like off the top of your head what areas are going to perk well and not perk well.
Yes, that's a big thing.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
All right, let's wrap it up. Going back to the Chatham County situation, come after tomorrow or starting tomorrow, what is your recommendation for somebody looking for property? Or let me rephrase that: looking for residential housing here in Chatham County.
So this didn't happen overnight. We knew it was going to happen in advance. The forms changes happened in July. So we've had these forms, we've had time to study the forms. So the offer to purchase, the listing agreement, the buyer's agency agreement, the all the disclosures that we have all been changed and edited to make sure that we comply with this new settlement. So all that's been worked out. Not everybody knows how to use the form. So if I get one more phone call from another agent, what's the difference between a 220 and a 770? And I know.
Should I even be asking?
No. It's gibberish. It's gibberish to anybody else. But every agent in this county has been asking me, Eric, what's it? I think everybody has. They know it's a 220 now, and that's what you need. But it's just it didn't. So the bell rings tomorrow, but we've been prepared for it. I don't think we're completely prepared for the misinformation. I watched NBC Nightly News and love me some Lester Holt. I think he's a great guy and everything. But his first statement, before the news came on, was how Americans are going to save thousands. And I was just like, when we actually watched the episode, they did a great job of explaining it. It was very, very accurate, and they said there's potentially, and this can happen, and this can happen. So they did a great job. But the lead in, I think, and that's what people hear is just a lead in,
Right, that was right before the commercial break, wasn't
exactly,
it? Yeah.
Right.
Come on back and we'll tell you how you can save money.
And that was kind of misleading or whatever. So, but one of the things I know about real estate is whatever we think is going to happen isn't necessarily what's going to happen, and so that's why I'm interested into seeing. So, one of the things as an owner of this firm, the agents ask me, well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And I was like, all right, this is what we're going to do, but it's subject to change because the market's the market. We got to figure it out.
So from your agents and the folks that work here, you're going to be gathering information as this progress. Because let's admit it, there's going to be hiccups.
There's going to be hiccups, and I have agents that work more buyers than they do sellers, so they're a little bit more worried. The seasoned agents that tend to be a little bit heavier on the seller side, they're like, it doesn't really change anything for them all that much and everything, so they're not worried about it. One of the things that's really, really difficult with this current market that we're in is inventory is really low. So if you're a strong listing agent, you're going to continue to be a strong listing agent. It's not going to have that much of an impact on you, but inventory is everything right now. And, so you want to make sure that your sellers know what's going on. But I don't think it's going to, I really think that this is, and a lot of people are saying this on like the different social medias or whatever. I do think there's some advantages to the more experienced, seasoned agents right now, and it's going to be a little bit harder for the people that don't have as much experience.
Let me ask you this, and we don't need to get into specific names, but do you have newer agents here that you're going to have to spend a little bit more time with to make sure that they're successful? Or I know you got a lot of seasoned agents, and I've known several of them for over the years.
Yeah. Well, I think, if the way that you get experience is by dealing with buyers first. It's hard to get somebody to say, hey, you need to sell your house with me. Well, how many houses have you sold? 0. It's just, but when you've had a few buyers and then those buyers a couple of years from now turn into sellers, they remember you as their agent. Right. So that's how you start building up your portfolio. So it takes, it can take a good 3 to 5 years before you're established and doing a decent amount of business. But I do think that the agents that are just working with buyers are definitely going to have to change their game plan. One of the things that I've seen already is some of our newer agents that focus on buyers. They have buyer consultations and they come in here, sit at the table and say, all right, this is all that's involved. This is what I need from you. And it makes it a lot more serious. The buyer realizes that it's a commitment, but also the agent realizes that it's a commitment to the buyer. So I think that's a good thing.
You mentioned you got a lot of seasoned agents, but some of those seasoned agents started off with you as new agents, and I know you've had some agents that have moved on and have started their own agencies.
They're doing real well. Yeah, we've had. One of the things I pride myself in is how many top producers that we have throughout the county that are doing their own thing right now. But I don't think those people are going to have any trouble whatsoever. They learned from a good firm in the beginning, but also I think they've carried that on and they're doing well.
Well, they're probably better able, and just like yourself, better able to handle those hiccups that are going to occur.
Right. I do worry that it's going to be harder for some of the smaller independent agents to work out and find that niche. I do think that some of these larger firms, and when I say larger firms, I'm talking like statewide, the big firms that have hundreds of agents, they might have a little bit of a competitive edge. I don't like to see the independent, obviously with my background, but I don't like to see the independents get squeezed out.
Yeah, but as long as you've got talented folks who have some experience and know what they're doing.
You would hope, yeah.
You would hope. Come on,
well,
Eric, I know you. It's not a you will hope. You know you're going to work the hardest that you can to make sure you guys are successful.
I think there's some. I think there's some larger firms that are going to have like their 220s already posted on their website and everything. And as a mom and pop operation, I really can't afford to have someone monitor that all the time. So if you have 3 or 4 or 700 agents, you can afford to do that and everything. So that might be a little bit of advantage to them. But I don't mind the phone call. Eric, do you have a 220? Yes, let me send it to you. What are you paying out? Blah, blah, blah. Anytime that I get to talk to an agent before they show my properties, that's a good opportunity.
Yeah, let me talk a little bit offside. Relationships. People do a lot of this, but do you still find, I still find that those relationships where sometimes you can pick up a phone and talk to somebody for a couple minutes is more efficient than a long thread or a long bunch of...
You can't sell real estate by pushing a button.
Right.
It's still a people business. I definitely, I can't do a CMA without having boots on the ground.
CMA.
Comparative market analysis. Okay. Like if you want me to evaluate a piece of property, I have to walk the property. I can't just do it from a computer or my phone or whatever. If you want me to look at a house or a farm or whatever, I need to actually go in the house and see
it. How many snakes you running into after this rain?
I have not seen many snakes.
Oh, didn't you say one of your agents saw a huge snake when
but it's really, really a lot more rare than what people think.
All right.
Yeah, ticks are far worse than snakes in Chatham County.
Exactly. It's like I have a wooded lot and I spray the yard, but once you get past into the trees, yes, you have to watch out for that.
Yep.
All right. Anything else we need to let the folks in Chatham County know
No, I
before
think
we
that
sign
covers
off?
it. I mean, if we get any questions, we're definitely here to answer them.
Yeah, and what's the best way to folks reach out? I know, give them the website and also give them a phone number.
Our office number is 919-542-0523.
That number again.
919-542-0523. You can text me directly, 919-548-1014. You can just text me a question. And then my email is eric@ericandrewsrealtor.com. And one of the most annoying things I do when I sit down in front of the TV and everything, I get all these questions from YouTube and whatnot, and it's kind of fun for me just to sit and answer questions, so I don't mind that at all.
Yes, but you and Greg and I had a discussion when the three guys from Pittsboro were having lunch out that there are times where you just shut off, man.
I do. Yeah, you got to.
You
You got to have your own time. Yeah.
have some quiet time.
Usually 2 hours in the weight room per night. That's what I like. Turn it off. Turn it off.
Turn it off. All right, folks. There's the information. We'll turn this also into an article. I'll have Eric's information on the bottom of the article.
Yeah.
We will probably do a follow up on this in September. I figure at least 30 days.
And we'll see how it shakes out.
We'll see that. I'm sure there's going to be more information. We'll talk about what's happening here in Chatham County, what's happening around the state, what's happening around the nation. But again, the goal of this is to give folks information here in Chatham County that you can use. I've known Eric for over 2 decades, I think almost 3. And he's a good resource. He knows what he's talking about most of the time. And and thank you very much for watching.
Thank you.
Man.
Yeah, I got more.